really nice that I'll actually be able to ask you some questions that I wasn't able to ask you while we were playing or touring, stuff like that.
Cool.
So yeah. And I've been doing these talks with musicians that I really like and love, and you've been one of my favorite players and composers for a really long time, as you know. I mean, and I kind of want to just jump into it, like into some things that I never asked you, like. I think we spoke once, and I said like Claudia Quintet for me was like I saw you guys in Maribor also here then 5 years ago. That's like the main composition vehicle, I guess, for you. I wanted to ask you, how did this band actually start, or like also why the bizarre, in a way, combination of instruments? I mean, accordion and everything that you play also. So.
I mean, it was a long time ago. It was probably around 1998 in New York City, and it was just a combination of like, I was trying to put a band together, right? So I was, whenever I'd meet somebody, and at that time I was meeting, new people a lot. So I met, not sure who I met first, but. I think I met Ted Reichman first, and we had a group called the Refuseniks with Ruben Radding for about a year. We played in this internet cafe called Alt Coffee. The people that own that place went on to start another club called Tonic. Which was
really? Oh,
yeah, which was kind of a important club in New York.
Yeah.
And so I had that group with Ted and Ruben. That was a collective group. So that was the first time I ever played with accordion. So and Ted also has a unique kind of background. So his way of playing the accordion was not, he wasn't coming from a jazz standpoint, and he just kind of learned the accordion while he was simultaneously studying with Anthony Braxton. So it was
really?
So it was kind of a very strange way to learn your instrument.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why he had a unique approach. And then at that time, Ruben decided to. He was kind of burned out. So he decided to move away from New York and actually even stop playing the bass. Since then, I think he's come back to it, but for a while he stopped playing. So that group kind of abruptly ended. And so it was around that time I was like, well, I still kind of wanted to do something with Ted, and I had recently met Matt Moran. I met Matt in Germany. There was this. I was playing with the Bob Brookmeyer's New Art Orchestra. Mm-hmm. It was a festival called the Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival. It's up in the north in the summer. It's mostly classical, but they had a kind of a jazz part. And that summer they were doing Gunther Schuller was the guest. So he was doing all kinds of things, and he had written a piece for the Modern Jazz Quartet with orchestra. So he used our rhythm section from Bob's band, but we didn't have a vibes player. So then he asked around in Boston, and Matt got recommended for that gig. So he came over to Germany to play that piece, and then it was part of a 12-hour concert, a marathon, like jazz meets classical concert. So they asked Matt to do something else, and he asked me. We didn't know each other yet, but he asked me to play with him, just free improv. So that's how I met Matt, and that was great. And playing, I kind of play the vibes a little bit, but not. I'd never heard anybody play it like Matt does. He has a unique
nice, incredible.
Unique approach. And then yeah, around that time, well, Matt, I think I know that Matt was talking about Chris Speed, and I kind of, I didn't know him maybe, but I knew who Chris was, and at that time I think he lived with Jim Black and maybe with like Andrew D'Angelo and Kurt Rosenwinkel. I think they all lived together, and then I had played a little bit with Ben Monder. And one time we drove up state to Drew Gress's house and had a jam session with him.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I met Drew, and yeah. So it took a little while. There was before Chris. I think there were a few other people who were in the band. Maybe probably even before it had the name Claudia, but it was basically that band. And but little by little it kind of came together, and then that's it. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So it wasn't really the people. It wasn't really the instruments as much as the people, but they happened to play like unique instruments too.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of like luck involved. But I was looking for something different. So when I finally came upon it, I was like, I don't think I knew of any bands that had that lineup of. Some had vibes and clarinet, some had accordion and different instruments, but not any vibes, clarinet, accordion. I didn't know any.
Definitely not. Yeah, but it was it 3 years, because Claudia is, despite the corona, I saw some footage you guys did. It's basically still active after 22 years, right? So
yeah.
How hard is it for you to keep this band together? Because all these guys are like leaders on themselves and incredibly busy musicians. And how hard was it 3 years for you to keep this group together and work with it? Like,
yeah, I mean, when we first started playing, all of us lived in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And except for Drew. And now, we had one change, and Red Wierenga came in for Ted.
Oh, yeah.
Ted moved to Boston. He had a son. He couldn't. Yeah, it wasn't possible. Now, Matt. Everyone's married and has children, except for me and Drew. But Matt Moran has a child, a beautiful daughter, and now Chris Speed, he has a beautiful daughter, and he actually lives in Los Angeles now. So yeah, it's quite it's quite hard. Yeah, the logistics of it are quite hard.
And you're in Canada.
And I'm in Canada.
Has to be said. Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to get just a time where we could get together to do a tour is difficult, and the possibility of like rehearsing is not that's not really possible unless you have a So usually like we'll rehearse, like we all go to wherever the first place is in the tour and rehearse there. But I want to. Doesn't get easier. Let's say.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask you this, because your music is incredibly complex, right? I mean, the tunes are like really, or the arrangements are long, and at least that the way I hear it, maybe. I wanted to ask you, like, how do you guys rehearse and get this together? And how do you see the band develop through the years? I mean, I listened to your recordings now today and yesterday a little, just, to get in the vibe. And I mean, it's definitely your composer signature is there throughout the entire 20 years, but like, how do you as a composer and a drummer, especially in this band, and a band leader, see this band developed?
Well, yeah, okay, so a few things there. One is that, well, I think I have to say that I'm not trying to make complex music, for sure. I'm actually trying to make simple music.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it just sometimes comes out maybe sounding complex, but I think if you, some people have told me, like Red, for instance, has told me that because he listened to the band before he was in the band, and then when he when he actually looked at the music for the first time, it looked a lot simpler than he thought it would be, you know. So
yeah, I'll rephrase myself. I mean, it sounds incredibly like songs, you know, when you listen to it. It's singable. But then me as a musician, once I start digging into it, then you begin to realize about all these layers and rhythmic things that are happening. But like as a tune, it's actually, you know, it's almost not popish, but you know what I mean. It's
yeah. Well, I think that's a different thing. I wouldn't call that complexity, but maybe that it has different access points. So you can access the music through melody. You could access the music through rhythm, usually polyrhythm. You could access the music through harmony or through timbre, you know, or maybe even through form. That's a lot of people don't access music through form, but a lot of people access music through. And we have a few records with vocalists. So then, if you have to access music through words, you could do that too, sometimes. So everyone kind of, I think, has their own way of accessing music, to kind of like a place, a way for them to get into the music, something that kind of immediately attracts them to get into it. So I do think about that and try to make those, have there be multiple access points, and so that means, you know, that those different parts of the music is hopefully strong. But I mean, when I first started writing for the band, it took, you know, it took some time to kind of figure out, you know, for me to figure out what their aesthetics were, and for them to figure out mine. And now we know them, so I would say that you know, we can learn new music a lot faster, because, you know, we have even reference points of like, oh yeah, this thing that we're doing now, it's pretty weird, but it's just similar to that piece we did, you know, 10 years ago. So okay, I understand you. So there's like less explaining that I would have to do, and I have now their sound in my head. So, you know, I can kind of hear what it's going to sound like now, which I couldn't do in the beginning. And also I even know, you know, I even kind of know how they might react to certain things. So I there was a period of time where I would write some things, and some people in the band would do the opposite of what I was asking them to do, actually. And for a while I thought that was a strange, kind of aggressive move, but then I realized that that's their aesthetic. You know, they're thinking more of a counterpoint. So something simple like, if you write a piece that has chord changes, normally you would think a person would play over those chord changes, but some people in my band might say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. That's already there. So I'm going to do something else.
Oh, yeah.
So even, you know, the way to write the music is different for each person.
Yeah.
So, for instance, some people in the band, I wouldn't even write chord changes, and so I know that now. So there's you know, some shortcuts that have developed over time, over us getting to know each other.
So it's really important, right, that you know how, let's say, Chris plays, that you, when you write a new Claudia song, you basically have that in your mind, right? Like, yeah, that's so important. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, like, also, since we're with composing now, how do you actually compose, let's say, for Claudia, like, because it's like a water, your music, in a sense, like that it goes like somewhere and then it goes somewhere. It's like, but it's also so many layers. How do you compose? Do you compose like on piano, or do you write down sometimes stuff where you are in a composition? Because some tunes travel through so many territories, like in a way, you know. How do you envision a composition, let's say, that I don't know, like that tune from Four, Be Happy, if you know, which one has like so many layers, for instance. How do you envision a tune, for instance?
I'll say the first thing is that I let the tune tell me what it wants to do. That sounds abstract, but that's what I'm doing when I'm writing it. I'm trying to let the tune tell me how it wants to be, instead of me forcing something on it, or putting some sort of automatic form on it. So, you know, for instance, if some people start writing something, they immediately label it as, oh, that's the melody, or oh, that's the bass line. And then once they have that, they automatically think, well, that, you know, if it's a melody, then it's going to go, you know, at the beginning of the piece, and then it's going to go at the end of the piece. And then they kind of start assuming all these other things about the role of the material and the form. So I would work really hard to not do that, and to let the form be, to let the material be liquid, and to play with it, to really play with it, to not set it. So I might say like that could be a bass line, but I wouldn't say that's a bass line. I would just say, well, that I think that could be a bass line, and I'd kind of wait for that material to tell me if it wants to be a bass line, when it wants to be a bass line, and how and where. And so, you know, just kind of playing with the material in a worksheet, sketchy format.
So you do it by hand first, basically, or?
Well, again, if what I realized is that if I wanted each piece to be different, then the process had to be different. So I don't have one process. I have, you know, thousands, because each, not thousands, but almost 1,000, let's say. How many pieces? Yeah. Well, some pieces have the same process, but if you think about, you know, the tools that you use, like computer, like paper, like an instrument, like your voice, a tape recorder, there's many different, you know, software, many different tools you could use, and then you can use different combinations of those tools. So you could start on paper and then put it in the computer and then bring it over here and then go, you know, so the combinations of tools could be, is kind of infinite. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to make everything about the piece different, meaning even the process of writing it and the tools that I use. Now it's still coming through me, so there is a good chance that there's some things that are similar. And of course, in this case, if you're writing for the same band, then of course there's going to be things that are similar. But I still try hard to work on the pieces in different ways, so that so I don't start copying myself. So that's an important philosophy, I would say.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, for me, like, sometimes, especially lately now, you know, I start writing something and I'm like, you know, it's again some rhythmic pattern that I've done 10 years ago. So, you know, that's good. How to get rid of this repeating yourself or stepping out of your skin. This is,
Well, maybe some of the disadvantages of being a drummer, I try to use as an advantage. So one of the disadvantages is that I'm not, you know, that I'm not, I don't have great, you know, ears. So I try not to use my ear in creating the material. I think that when you use your ear, a lot of times what you're using is memory. You're not actually creating something new. It might seem new to you at that moment. It might seem like divine inspiration, and it could be. But I think a lot of times it's memory. You're accessing something you've already heard. So it could be something you created, and a lot of times it is, because when you create something, you hear it over and over again, so it gets kind of embedded in your memory. Or it could be something that you just heard even once, you know, I once wrote a tune, and I was like, wow, that was a cool tune. I don't know where that came from. That was interesting. And then it took me a long time to one day I was just listening to like an ECM record that I didn't even remember that I owned, and it was on there, and I had just copied the whole piece, but
amazing.
I thought, I thought it was mine, but I also had there was a little bit of doubt in there, like, that's very strange that this piece just came up, like, where did it come from, and I didn't really realize that it came from my memory.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you when people start writing music, they start with nothing. There's always nothing at first, and then you get something. So how you get that thing? A lot of times it comes from when you're practicing and something comes up, or when you're improvising. So in a lot of cases, it's coming from again, things that you do already. So if you try to come up with that first thing, not from your ears and not from your body, because a lot of times it's also muscle memory that's giving you that first thing.
Yeah.
Your fingers did this thousands of times, so they get used to doing it, and then there's something. So a lot of times I would try to get that first thing, which I call a cell, not from my ear. So, and it can come from
that's smart. Yeah.
It doesn't even have to come from music. It could come from words or numbers or images, so that's an important part. And then I work on it, I process it in a way to see what else it could be. So putting it upside down and reversing it and inverting it and doing things to it. And then along the way, that's where I'm looking for the piece. That's where I'm trying to find, what is this piece? What is this material? What does it want to be? What could it be? What's the form? And then, so once I have the material, that's when I'm more using my ear. So I'm trying not using my ear to generate the material. I'm using my ear more to curate the material.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. Yeah, no, because sometimes I stumble upon these blocks and it's just like, but I got the idea now, like.
Well, and the other thing that kind of sounds like what you have in there is judgment. And so I also, try not to judge the material too soon, because if you judge it, often it's even just, you have an idea, you think, oh, this is great. You go to have some lunch, you come back, you play it again, you're like, oh, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
exactly.
So I try to not actually judge the material. So, because I think the material itself can't itself be good or bad. Yeah. It's just material. So, like, in anything that you think is good or bad, there could also be other things that could be good or bad in it. So I think what I'm doing when I'm processing the material is I'm generating material, but I'm also analyzing it, and I'm also kind of trying to see what it is. Is this this is wow, this has there's a lot in there. Then I know, this could be a very long piece. There could be a lot of development in this piece. Whereas if I have some stuff and I process it and there's not really that much there besides what I had at first, then I think, okay, well, that's probably going to be a short piece. I can't find a lot of material to develop. So that's a difference for me. That would be a difference between a song and a composition.
Yeah. But do you revision your music a lot? Let's say you write a tune. I mean, two questions in here. How long would it take you, let's say, to write a composition for Claudia? Of course, it depends on a composition, but like, do you write it for a longer period, or like, does it flop out like, in a few hours? And do you then like sometimes change it when you bring it to the band, that you're like, oh shit, this is like crap, or I'll drop everything, or like these two things, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, so how long it takes that's a hard one to say, because usually it's but I would say I'm slow, and I'm working on it a lot over a period of time. So sometimes, like we'll we're on tour and I'm trying to write this one tune, you know, and it could take like weeks and weeks and weeks, you know, before I could give it to the band. And then when I give it to the band, again, I try not to evaluate it too much in front of them anyway, and just try to record it and then bring it back and then, you know, think about what I could do to fix it. And it could come sometimes, you know, we try some things and then that piece doesn't come back. Like they don't see that piece again for a year or something. When they see it a year later, it has a different title and it's different now than it was. And they're like, hey, did we ever play this before? And I'm like, well, one time we tried something like this, but you know. So I think revision is a very important composition tool. And it also involves non-attachment to the material. So if you fall in love with your material, then you won't be able to revise it. So a lot of times students will bring material and they'll say, yeah, I have this piece, it's not very good, but you know, here it is, and you know, can you look at it? And I'll look at it and I'll say, well, yeah, there's some good things in there. You know, I would just maybe take this one section here, and they say, no, I can't change that one section. I love that one section. Okay, and I'm okay. So let's look at this other section. Oh no, that's my second favorite section. No, I can't. So I'll say, well, but you told me you didn't like the piece, and I don't like it, but you know, so that just means they're so attached to it that they can't change it. And so revision is a good way to practice that, you know. And actually, when you revise, you're not really changing it anyway. You know, the first version is usually still there. If you want it, it's still there. So you let that sit, and then you make another version of it. So that's that's revision for me. Is my students they know that revision is one of my favorite words.
Oh yeah, okay. No, it's funny because like, you know, like I've read so many interviews also with poets since I'm really into poetry for the last 20 years, and you have these two styles. Like some poets also do a lot of rewriting, and then you have like just poets who would write the whole thing and that's it. You know, not touch it back. So it's interesting to hear this also as a composer from you, that you actually do this rewriting, revisioning thing, which I think it's quite important. That
I mean, the other way is, to me, it's a little bit more like a improvisation, you know, thing where you improvise and then you might record it or you perform it, and then that's it. You know, you can't actually change it. You already played it. So that to me is where that would come in. But also to answer your other question, like, you know, sometimes I get lucky and some piece comes out quickly, you know. Sure. But usually it's in the middle of another project. I'm working on something, and then in the middle of that, I'm trying to do something else, and some piece just like pops out, and I'm just like, I don't know what that is, but that's great in a way, but I don't have time I can't do that right now. So I just kind of, you know, get it out as much as it needs to be out, and then, you know, say, okay, I'll come back to you later when I have time. But it's often that a quick piece comes as some sort of a reaction or residue, like from something else that you're doing. You're not trying to do it, but it just pops out.
I wanted to ask you just about one tune that I wrote this down. I have to ask you about the pure poem on Super Petite. How did you come up with this one? What's the story compositionally behind there? Because for me it's quite intriguing. I don't know why, but like I listened to it today like 3 times, and I was like, damn, there's something there. Like, but.
So do you know what it's based on?
Well, I would say it's some poetic pattern, like some haiku or something. I don't know, but like there's some rhythmic pattern, right?
Yeah. Well, so there's a I can't think of the writer right now, but there's a Japanese poet who I think the piece.
Oh you told me that once. Yeah.
Yeah. The title is the title of his poem, but these particular poems. And maybe this is the only thing that he does. I don't remember, but it seems to me that all his poems are just using the Japanese words for, I could be wrong, but I'm going to say 1, 2, and 3. Just the numbers 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
And you can watch some YouTube videos of him performing these pieces. It's rather, beautiful. But that's all it is. It just takes those 3 words and just combines them in different, yeah. And so I just took one of those and basically, I started, I don't know if I ended this way, but I started just with the rhythmic sound of the words, the actual words, like, I forgot now the words, but the Japanese for 1, 2, 3. So I started with just the rhythm of each of those words, and then I just took his poem and just translated it.
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
So I assigned a certain rhythm, and it ends up being some pitches too, to each number, and then once I did that, then I just took his combination and wrote that out.
Oh wow!
And then it's a very difficult piece to play, actually.
It sounds so groovy in a sense, so easy, but then
it's very difficult because there's nowhere to breathe.
Yeah, I know. But like
for Chris, he's circular breathes, I think, but it's also folk concentration wise. It's very difficult to play because it's just
it's constantly shifting, right? In a sense of rhythmically.
It's the same stuff over and over again, but it keeps coming in different places, and it's not a piece not a piece we've actually even played that much. I remember when we first played it. I think the first time we played it was at a master class at New England Conservatory, just as we were kind of like working on it. So it's for whatever reason, it's just a piece that's hard to find a place in a performance to play it,
because it's quite short also.
It's short, and it's so the combination of it's really short and it's really difficult. Make it like, do we really want to do this? But I am really happy the way it came out.
It's incredible.
And it is an example of like a piece that really sounds different. That doesn't sound like other pieces.
Definitely. Yeah. No, that's what I wanted to ask you, because it popped up. It's like one of those tunes that you listen to. You're like, damn, what is this?
Yeah.
And play it again. It's like,
with that, and that piece. The inspiration for that piece, actually, it's funny because there's a very controversial poet named Kenneth Goldsmith, and he's actually more of a conceptual artist who kind of then went into poetry, and he'll say things like, no new poetry should be written. We should just take the words that are already there and then use those. So he has a lot of interesting books, conceptual books, and so he has a book called Uncreative Writing, and it's actually a book that's used ironically in a lot of creative writing courses.
Check this out.
Yeah, and in that book, that poem is an example of kind of new ways to write poetry, but where you're not actually you're making poetry from things that are already there.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, just the number 1, 2, 3, just to look and see how this person did it. The other thing about those poems is the way they look. So he writes out each number it's very beautiful. They look very beautiful. They kind of look like art.
Art, yeah. No, that makes sense. That I heard some, haiku is like what 5, 7, 5 or something like that. I heard some numbers game going on there, but I couldn't figure it out like exactly. But since we're speaking about poetry, you've done quite a lot of poetry connections also with Claudia, as a matter of fact, with Kenneth Patchen.
Yes.
And you mentioned also before that kind of you try to get these different tools for you as a composer. And I wanted to ask you, like, especially for this What is the Beautiful project, what did poetry, I mean, of course you added then vocals, which is also another component, but how did poetry change your writing process for that one? Like, especially.
Right. Well, so in that case, yeah, the cell, what I would call the cell, would be the poem.
Yeah.
So you have this poem, and you want to see what information and material you can get from this poem. So from any poem, you could get rhythm, you could get pitch, just by, even if you just, have a recording of someone reciting the poem, or if you recite the poem, there'll be at least some pitch material in there. You could get some help by the, text painting, some paint, like thinking about what kind of music would go, with this word, so if the word is like, God, or the word is fire, the music should be somehow different for those two words. And also, there's a lot of feeling and emotion in the poems too. So, some poems are like, a lot of Kenneth Patchen writes love poems, but he also writes these very satirical, political, poems. So there's a lot of information there. And that's what I would start with, to see what kind of information I could get from that. And then, thinking about the people playing it immediately. So in the case of that record, there was a few strange things that came up that ended up helping me. But they were kind of obstacles. So Kurt Elling, who's a great singer, but he's also great spoken word artist, and actually he knows a lot about Kenneth Patchen and really loves his work. So I'm not sure if I knew that when I asked him, but right away I think I started by asking him, like, about people, if he knew anyone who had some connection to Kenneth Patchen. He knew a lot of poets that did, and especially in San Francisco, because Kenneth Patchen was really inspirational to a lot of the beat poets.
Yeah. But did you speak to those poets then as well, or like?
There was one who I did a little, yeah.
Okay.
But so what mostly happened in this case was that, well, for one, Kurt could not come to the recording session, so that made a big difference in how the music was put together. And then also his record label wouldn't allow him to sing on the record.
Oh wow, interesting.
So he could do spoken word, but I think he wasn't allowed to sing.
Oh wow. Okay.
So those two things, right away, set up a thing where, like, okay, so if Kurt is going to do this piece, it's going to be spoken word, and also he's going to have to record it. In this case, first. So he recorded his parts alone.
I thought it would be vice versa. Okay, he would overdub.
It might have just been logistical, like just the schedule, why I had to be like that. But I think for me, it really helped me to have the recordings of him reciting the poems, because Kenneth Patchen, there are recordings of even of Kenneth Patchen reciting his poems, and I think in a lot of cases they're an example of this kind of stereotypical example of certain poets who, when they read their own poetry, it's pretty boring.
That's many times like that.
So when Kurt would read the Kenneth Patchen poems, to me it was they came to life. you know,
Oh.
much more than the Kenneth Patchen versions. So yeah, so you know, we made a few decisions. Sometimes there's one piece where we decided to record with a click track, so that that's the title track, so that he was reciting this poem, but it had some sort of tempo. Yeah, it had a tempo. Yeah. And that was very helpful for us, because that piece was really built around his spoken word and how the rhythm and everything. And then yeah, there was a couple others where most of the other ones he just did his thing, and then it was for me to kind of figure out, you know, what do we do now with this, and also I didn't want it to sound like that Kurt was recording from another session. So, you know, we had to have parts where we played with Kurt, like in unison, where it sounded like we were, you know, playing with him, and other parts where he was singing kind of over the band, and you know, so that made quite a bit of difference. But I got a lot of information. So there's some pieces where I got pitch information from Kurt, and the pitches kind of that we ended up using are because of what he used. You know?
Yeah. Oh, wow, interesting. Okay, quite cool. I'll re-listen to this record now.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear these things, because I think it changes the perspective. You know?
Right. And then the other vocalist on there, Theo Bleckmann, he actually could come to the session. So there were some things that we did with Theo where, you know, we could do it live. We could record it live. You know, so certain things we could take advantage of that too, and do things that we couldn't do with Kurt.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, years before that, you participated also on the Liso Gress project by Fred, right? Did you talk ever with Fred, how he approached that project? Like you talked about how you did this now as a band leader and as a composer. Did you then, when you did that project, because Kurt was also present in that one, how did you approach that, or how did he approach that project?
I don't think I've actually really talked to him about it, but I mean, I've played the music a lot, and so you can get a lot from that. Just see like, oh, look at this poem, like you know, there's even some pieces I believe where he takes the same poem and sometimes it's spoken, and then other times, and then he'll take the same poem later, but it will be sung. Yeah. I mean, definitely from that, I was able to kind of see the incredible wow of just Kurt Elling is just like, he's just incredible, you know.
Yeah.
So he could really bring things to life with his singing, but also spoken word, you know. Spoken word really, it's not that many people that can do that. But yeah, I don't believe I really talked. I don't know if maybe Fred has talked about it in some way, but he's not I don't feel like he's a person who does a lot of compositional processes. He's mostly like, today I wrote this piece, and then this morning I wrote this piece. Like he you know, he's very fast, and it just, you know, so he lived with the poems a lot, and then, you know, I think he's written a lot of pieces with lyrics. So it's just, you know, the similar process of like reading the words out loud, and then, you know, from there you get feeling, you get rhythm, you get even, you know, pitch.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you also about Theo. You mentioned Theo, right? And I think you guys been working together for the last 20 years, or probably more.
Even more.
And you sound like really musically amazingly together. Like, when did you guys meet, or when did you meet Theo, and what does he bring to your? Because he can do anything, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
he can.
When did you guys meet at first?
So yeah, I remember seeing him perform when I first moved to New York at the old knitting factory. It was a group by Mark Dresser. It was called Mark Dresser's Four Screen. It had I think Dave Douglas was in it, and Phil Haynes.
Oh,
It might just be a quartet. I can't remember now, because basically I spent the whole night just listening to Theo. Like I had never heard anything like that, you know, as you say, yeah. And then I was living with Ben Monder. So Ben Monder was my roommate, and he brought Theo over once because they had a duo. They still do. Yeah. And so then I think I got just the idea of like, oh, maybe I'll write a piece for them. So that's how I kind of, you know, got maybe introduced to Theo. I wrote a piece called No Boat, which is the title track of their first record.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I missed out that you wrote that. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I have the album actually, but okay.
Yeah. And they use that piece a lot, you know. It's one of my better pieces because it's very tonal, but it's also very intervallic, and it's also 12-tone piece. Yeah. So it kind of has like there's a lot that someone like Ben Monder can get into, and it's just a melody. So there's no chords written. So Ben can just, every time they played it, he could do different things with it.
Oh, wow.
So I think they enjoyed that piece for many years. So then I, at that same place called Alt Coffee, where I was playing with the Refuseniks. So in the first period, it was Refuseniks every Monday night. And then when the Refuseniks kind of stopped in that period when Claudia was getting formed, then Ted Reichman was curating or even asking musicians to curate that music. So I think that's where I first did like a duo gig with Theo, just free improv duo gig. Wow. And we've done, that was what we did mostly for many years. Of course, he played it. I had a group called Quartet Lucy. He played in that. I played on some of his bands and records. He plays with my large ensemble. He got me into the Meredith Monk ensemble, so we were together in that group. We have the Refuge Trio now, Gary Versace. So yeah, it was a lot of different bands, and then of course he's done some work with Claudia. Yeah, so he was just a person that like right away, and he, you know, right away we love like little sorry, you hear that? Getting notifications here. Hold on.
It's okay.
There it goes. Right away, you know, we both really like toys and sound sources. Oh, yeah. And so we have that in common, that we, you know, could go to toy stores and little 99-cent stores and get fun little things for our gigs. So we had that, but at the same time, I play the drums and he sings. So those are like, you know, some people would say those are the first instruments, the first, you know, voice and drums. So primal. It has this primal thing, but also, you know, it's really can do like you can do anything, you know. Yeah. So we've done a lot of we play songs. We can play songs of different kinds, you know, but we've done a lot of improv, and the improv gets very environmental, like where we think about, you know, okay, this is like a room, so let's pretend, you know, we're going into this room, and we just stay in this room for a while. And also we did a lot of gigs, a lot of duo gigs, and what was really important besides the gigs was that we would often talk about the gigs afterwards. So on the drive home, we might even have a recording of them, but we can say like, oh yeah, that was, you know, and a lot of times it was like me saying, oh man, that was so great, I love that part, and Theo would be like, oh no, I didn't feel good because, you know, my jam man broke on that first piece or something. And then, you know, or be the opposite, and he would say, oh man, that was amazing. I was like, oh no, my bass drum pedal like broke, and I really felt bad. So we would, you know, realize that the way we thought about the music was based on our internal, what was going on internally, and little things that went wrong technically to our equipment or whatever would kind of change and put like a, you know, a cloud over the whole gig, where you might think, oh, that was a terrible gig, when actually, for me, I didn't know that his jam band broke, and I was like, wow, it was really great when you did that weird thing that I've never heard you do before. But, you know, he wasn't doing it on purpose.
Yeah, sure.
So we learned a lot from just talking about the gigs. I learned a lot about improv, all the different ways you could improvise.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely one of my most important, maybe the most important musical partnerships. Has been with you.
Yeah. But you mentioned like also Meredith Monk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I figure for you, I would say like, if maybe I'm wrong, but like Bob Brookmeyer and Meredith Monk are like.
That's it.
Really,
those are my two. Those are my
in
two
what
mentors.
Sense?
Yeah.
Both of them. In what sense? Like if you shorten it, like.
Well, they're my mentors.
Yeah.
So
like
so
Bob Brookmeyer compositionally, definitely, right? Like
both
and
of them,
arrangement-wise.
No, both of them compositionally. Yeah.
Oh.
So you know, mentorship is really important, and it's something that's used to happen more naturally in jazz. You know, like for instance, Art Blakey was a mentor for sure to a lot of musicians, and you know, it usually involves like that you see the best and the worst of that person. You know, you play with that person, and you get to know. You actually even get to know their faults. You know, and you see them. You know, early in the morning when they don't look so good, and you see them when they're sick, and you know, but you also see them when they're happy and when they have, you know, when they win big awards and everything's going great for them, or they, you know, but really they also both have given me a lot of support. A lot. They've supported. They both have always been like really telling me like, wow, you're really doing some great music here, and we really love it. And that you know means a lot coming from them. But yeah, also to watch them put music together, so I really know how they think about how to compose. They've both been really inspirational in that way. So yeah, those are my two mentors that I talk about when I teach composition. I talk about Bob Brookmeyer on the first day and Meredith Monk on the second day, you know, and they keep coming back, you know, of course. You know, unfortunately we lost Bob a few years ago, but Meredith, I'm actually in a few days there's going to be posted a duo gig that we did online. Like I was in Montreal and she was upstate New York.
Cool.
We did it using Jamulus, the software called Jamulus, and so that's so we're entering kind of a new phase, I would say, because we never did a duo before.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow, that's so cool.
So, and it's also it's her music, but the one thing that's quite different is that I'm playing mostly drum set, because I've never played drum set with her. I've always played like percussion. But I actually, you know, I'm introducing like drum set into our world.
Oh, wow.
It's very interesting, yeah.
So this was recorded already, right?
We recorded,
okay. I'm really curious.
Short concert a couple weeks ago.
Super.
And it's coming out on the 28th of October. But it's actually, you know, we've been trying to do this for a long time. We had a few gigs that got canceled, and then actually we were, you know, right when this pandemic started, I was on my way to New York to rehearse with her. We were going to play in a great festival called the Big Ears Festival. It's in Tennessee, and so that got, you know, postponed. So this is actually our premiere. But it's something that I think we will now, you know, hopefully do a lot more now.
That's so cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. Just speaking of collaborations, like you've done like so much sideman work as well, right? I mean, I have you like as a sideman on so many records at home. Like, what do you prefer? Like now that you have been a band leader for more than 20 years, if you compare being a sideman as a drummer and as a band leader in a way, how do you scale these two things? I mean, if you can.
Well, I mean, when you're a band leader, you lose a lot of money, and when you're a sideman, you make not a lot of money, but you make a little money, you know. So that balance is actually pretty important. When I was, you know, first I was just a sideman, and then when I started leading bands, that's one of the first things that I noticed. It's like, wait a minute, if I just do this, I'm not going to make any money. So like, how do you do that? You know. But also, like when you're a band leader, you have all the responsibility, and so when you're a sideman, it's like a holiday. You really you don't really have like the responsibility. You have to just show up and play, and it. So I love it for that reason, that it's relatively easy. You know.
It's more about music in a sense. Or...
Yeah, you can just concentrate on the music. You don't have to worry about how many people are coming to the gig or whatever, you know, like it's pretty great. So that balance is good. I would say the thing that's affected the sidemen thing the most is composing. So I think the more that you compose, the more you develop kind of very strong ideas about, you know, music. And so then over time, I would say, as a sideman, I have to sometimes let that go and not think about it, and sometimes I can't, you know. So that's why one reason why I do a lot less sideman work than I used to, but also just it's more of a time thing, that my time is taken up with the leading the bands that I lead and the bands that I compose for. So there's not quite as much time there to do it. You know, also under normal circumstances, this is not normal right now, but under normal circumstances, you know, I don't really love to travel. I'm not one of these people that loves to travel.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, if it's a sideman gig, you know, it has to be I really want the conditions to be nice and like the money to be nice and to make it somehow, you know, worth it in that way. So then when you turn around as a band leader, you know, it's easy to see what you need to do. Like you need to do the same for your sidemen. You need to side people, I should say. You need to, you know, give them the best that you can, the best money possible, the best meals, the best travel situation. You know, it's good when you sometimes when you switch. You know, sometimes I'll switch. I'll do a tour with my band and then immediately go to a tour where I'm not the leader. And so if now all of a sudden I'm doing this sideman gig and I'm getting paid a lot less and the food sucks, then I'm kind of like, wait a minute, I'm not getting as treated as well as I am treating people, you know.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. Yeah.
So I think they help each other in many ways, economically, of course, but even you can, as a sideman, you can learn how to be treated and how you want to be treated, so that when you're a leader, that can help you see like, oh, this is what it's like to be a side person, so I have to make sure I take care of this, and you know that I'm really trying to make the experience, you know, a nice one.
Yeah, I think that's quite important. Yeah, that you got the both of the worlds, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you also this: like, you've seen so much of the world, right? In a sense of, you taught in Graz and Berlin. You're like really wide musically. I think you're incredibly wide. Also, when I spoke to you before, like, which is heard in your compositions and in your playing. Actually, I mean, like, were your main influences musically and compositionally in the past, or when you started, and what are you listening to right now? Like, what are some things that say like, oh, wait a second, this is cool, this stirs something?
That's always a tough one.
I mean, like some drummers, let's say, who would be like 3 drummers that you, if since you're a drummer by profession, I mean, like, okay, who would be the 3 drummers that really influenced your playing, like when you started, or even now when you think about them, that you're like, okay, I don't know, Billy Higgins, that's, you know, there, or
Ooh, that's a hard one, but I mean, I could say Jack DeJohnette for sure. Um, hmm, Elvin Jones, I guess, would be probably next. After that, I would say it gets really hard because I you know I when I was younger, I especially I mean I go through periods, but when I was younger, I really was checking out Art Blakey, Philly Joe, Roy Haynes. Then there has been periods where I've gotten really into like even like Baby Dodds and some of the early drummers. And then of course I'm always influenced by newer drummers, and so it's not I think I've never really gravitated towards like this person or these three people. It's like the part of the aesthetic. My aesthetic is I love this. I love too many things. I love this. 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 It just goes on and on and on and on. That's just the way it is, So like I mean, so it's hard to even speak about what I'm listening to. I can say like for the last 2 days I've been really into this this Tom Petty song that has like Steve Ferrone is playing drums.
Yeah.
It's just like the sound, the drum sound is ridiculous, and the groove is ridiculous. So,
that's so cool.
That's just in maybe in the last couple days.
Yeah.
Something. Been listening to a lot of African music, all different kinds of African music. It's endless, really. It's not. I don't go like maybe some people go through like periods where they just listen to like one thing or something, but it's not like that for me at all, really. So one of the good parts about the internet, I would say, is you can see what's up there and what people are listening to, and so I find things on Twitter, every day that someone mentions, and some of it's people I never heard of before. Or people I've missed somehow, so there's a lot of people like that I missed,
wow.
and then come back, and so like I'd say I'm often very behind, so like I got into drum and bass music like 10 years after it was a thing, and I was just like, oh my God, look at this stuff, and everyone's like, dude, we were listening to that. Like, where were you? I don't know where I was. I don't know what I was doing. But, when I did find it, I was totally into it. But I was like literally 10 years too late. Someone like Herbie Nichols, I didn't really, I knew a little bit about him, but, now I'm like totally into Herbie Nichols.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Wow. I mean, I really like, I use his pieces a lot in lessons because he writes some very interesting forms, and he's a very, very rhythmic writer, and he uses the drums in really interesting ways, and so it's
very underrated. I mean, as a composer, I mean.
Oh, definitely. And I think a lot of the things that I'm listening to have to do with teaching, where I'm thinking about it kind of comes from your question. I think about like, what was important to me? What are the pieces that I really want to share? And then, and a lot of it's stuff that I don't listen to anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah, remember this, like I'm like last week I played some Kora music, Hamzel El Din. It's called a piece called the Water Wheel, and that was a piece that I listened to all the time when I was a student in college. And I wanted to share that with students and tell them like what I loved about it so much, and so a lot of it's like remembering and getting back to some things that I heard once and really loved, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, remember how important that was. I can look back and see that was really important.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, I think I'm very attracted to composers that don't stick to one style. Like Ligeti, would be a composer I really like. But there's a lot of musicians that are just kind of like doing all these different things and different kinds of music, and I'm of course attracted to that.
Yeah. John, just one last question. Like I spoke with Ben Allison the other day about that. He founded his own label like years ago, and songs you like a lot, if I'm not mistaken, was also you published it on your own. And I just wanted to ask you, since this Corona is happening now and the lockdowns and all this, why did you decide first of all to do that? To go, what are the advantages basically, and where do you see the music industry evolve? I think musicians are more and more going onto their own, and how come, and do you see this as a good thing, or what are the bad things also in it?
I mean, the bad things are I don't really want to do that kind of thing. I just want to, I want to practice the drums and compose, So the bad parts are the amount of time that it takes to do that kind of thing, which I don't really want to do.
Yeah.
But these things kind of came up for me. I've been working on these things for a year or two, and it just so happened that it happened, now. So first was a nonprofit organization that was this kind of created to help me with put all my different projects together, and then through that, one of my goals, when that came up, then people were asking me, well, what do you want to do? Well, one of the things I wanted to do was, I kind of wanted to get my records back from labels that so that I could kind of have them all, and some of that was just like I noticed like one label, a lot of the labels that we deal with, it's just one person. So if that one person, if they decide to retire, if they get sick, even if they die or something, like what happens, So I was in those situations where I was like, oh, maybe it's better if I kind of have the music. And the other thing is that, when a lot of my records were put out, there was no Spotify.
Yeah, definitely.
And so all of a sudden I started seeing my records on there, and I was like, huh, that's interesting, because that's not anything we ever talked about. And so people are just listening to my music for free. Huh. It seemed odd that I had no control over that. So now I could put my music on Spotify, but it's more if I decide to. It's my decision, So that's a big part of that label, is to try to get all of my music back and together under one. And for the most part, I re-released most of it on Bandcamp, because I do think Bandcamp is it's not perfect, but it is the best platform for musicians. And then this record came up, third record of a trilogy, songs you like a lot, and decided that would be a good way to kind of bring this idea of the label and the nonprofit, bring that out to the public, would be to with this record. So it's not anything I really wanted to do, but I think it at this point, somewhere at some point it became obvious that having your own label and having another label put your music out, that there was no difference. The music ended up in the same place, it had the same distribution, the same publicity, because you were paying for it either way.
Unless you have like a Verve, right, or Blue Note, that's a difference. Yeah.
There's a few labels left, very few that could make a difference. But the thing about most of those labels is that when you do the records for those labels, like you don't own the music, and so yes, it's great that the music gets out to a lot of people, but you don't know where that music's going to end up, and you have no control over it anymore. And so that, you know, I've had even friends of mine who are on Blue Note say, "Oh man, I'm so envious of you." And I'm like, "You're envious of me? Like you're on Blue Note." I'm like, "Yeah, but you have all your recordings. You own it. You can do what you want with it." So
Yeah.
that's interesting, you know, to see that the
perspectives,
the two sides. Yeah, but I mean, there's so few labels at this point. Most of the labels I know have their music on Bandcamp, and so you know, at this point, any person can do the same pretty much. Because you know, physical media it's hard to say, but it seems like it's non-existent. Yeah, you know, certainly I now come into contact with students who never owned a CD player and will never own one. You know, they never owned a CD player. So like they're not going to start now
collecting CDs. Yeah,
when they can access the music for free online.
Yeah,
there's very little incentive for them to buy it. You know, of course, I tried to explain to them, you know, how much harm that could do, but you know, as a medium like CDs, compact disc, it seems like it's you know, you can't play them in your computers anymore. You can't play them in the car anymore. So some large companies, and maybe it's the same large companies who decided that CD players were going in cars and computers. They've now decided that CD players are not going in cars and computers. So it's not under our control.
Yeah.
And at the same time, a lot of these companies, like Spotify, is the best example. They don't really care about music. They're not about music, you know. They're about data and making money, trying to figure out ways to generate money. So it's pretty scary what they're doing.
The musicians get like, what was it, 0.0001 per one stream, which is like that's really, you know,
it's worthless. It's not help. It's not going to help. It's not going to help anybody, you know. So yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, there's certain things that I like, certain records that, for instance, there's certain records I didn't pay for, you know, like they came through grants or things like that. So those records, I'm kind of like, well, you know what? I didn't really pay for this record, so it might be okay for me to put that out and offer it to people for free. But records that I paid for, I mean, like if I do a record with a large ensemble, that's like $40,000 or something. That's like a ridiculous amount of money to put into one record, you know. And you know, as much as possible, you want to try to get some of that back.
Sure.
And it's become kind of very much more difficult than it was. And it wasn't easy before, but
now it's even heavier.
That part of the music industry is kind of in a, you know, constant state of flux and changing, and it's hard to say where. I think it's not predictable where it's going, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Cool.